Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Creatives Podcast, where we explore creativity through conversation. Our guest today is Lauren Spangler, who is joining us all the way from Albuquerque, New Mexico. Lauren has a really interesting past as a professional musician, and she's currently a creative coach and a corporate strategist. And we're going to learn all about how she blends all of this together for a very beautiful and wholehearted approach to her life as an artist, a mother, and as a creative. In this episode, you can expect to learn some very valuable questions that you can ask yourself as points of reflection. You can expect to learn about why passion isn't quite enough to sustain you on this long journey as a creative. And we get some insights on how Lauren intentionally carves out time every single day, despite the fact that she's a very busy person, to devote to being an artist. The Creatives Podcast is brought to you by Pano Media, who is your trusted source for commercial video production and aerial cinematography in the Ottawa area. Pano Media is powering all of the production behind the Creatives Podcast. Our other sponsor is Midnight Hour Studios, who is your blank canvas studio space in the Ottawa area so that you could bring your creative dreams to life. All of our sponsors' information will be down in the description below. And without further ado, let's welcome Lauren. Hello, Lauren Spangler. Welcome to the show. Nice to have you here.
Hey, Ramsey. Super glad to be here with you. Thanks for the opportunity.
Nice. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. We're as you can see, we're testing another space, and I want to just dive right into this and ask you, Lauren, what does creativity mean to you?
Creativity is simple. It's just making something that wasn't there before. That might be a piece of art, might be a piece of music, it might be a meal, it might be an outfit. You and I are creating a connection right now. We're creating a conversation. This is an act of creativity. It's a pretty broad definition. It can even be just connecting to existing things in a new way. So lots of room to interpret.
I like that, connecting to existing things in a new way, because that kind of keeps things interesting. If you're able to take something that you see on a daily basis and see it in a new light, I find that's beautiful. I love that.
Yeah, there can be a lot of pressure when you sit down and think, okay, I have to now create something from nothing. If that's a little bit too blocky or difficult, it can be easy to say instead, what do I think is interesting around me that I might be able to look at in a new light or connect to something else interesting in a new way? And it becomes more playful and curious, and that's where I like to go.
I like that. And how do you, like that you mentioned, like less pressure? How do you release kind of that pressure off of yourself in your life, in your work?
I have a couple of ground rules for myself when I'm in my studio. And setting, I find freedom in the structure. So if I have a couple of guidelines for myself that I know work for me, work to get the creative energy flowing or help me get through the highs and lows of, making something, then knowing what those rules are can be helpful. So, it can be basic things like, I'm going to spend an hour here in my studio today, and I'm going to make something, and I'm going to enjoy the process. And if it's going really, really well, I'm still going to walk out after 60 minutes and pick it up tomorrow. And if it's going really terribly and it's dismal and I'm hating it, I'm still going to make myself stay here in the studio for 60 minutes and see it through. That right there helps with a lot of pressure release, because I know what I've signed up for. I know what my scope is, right? And then it just frees me up to not constantly be debating whether or not to jump ship on the project, and instead just be with the project and have fun with it and see where it goes.
I love that. So some of those ground rules, can you share those with us? Or are they like personal rules?
Yeah, sure. No, they're personal and shareable.
Okay.
So I have a pretty full schedule. I'm an artist. I'm also a business owner and a strategist and a wife and a mom. And so there's a lot of things happening in my day. And at some point I realized it was healthy for me to have 1 hour of the day in which I was nothing but an artist. And I had protected time, protected headspace, and I knew that I wasn't going to be interrupted, and I could just go create whatever felt like I wanted to work on it that day. And so the rules I set up for myself during that 60 minutes is I try my very best to stay focused in the work. And sometimes that means making sure I have someone loving and caring for my children in a different house or a different part of the house so that I know I won't be interrupted. Sometimes it means having good discipline around whether or not I'm using the internet, whether or not I'm on my phone, being really honest about, am I looking at this content or this media for inspiration, or am I now starting to avoid the work? So there are some guidelines around that I've found helpful. And then the piece of sticking through for an hour no more, no less. Just allow myself that hour, give myself that hour. And within that time, I've got to do what feels good. So if I'm enjoying something and it seems frivolous or it seems dumb or I can't see where it's going, but I'm having fun with it, that's my true north there. If I'm just laboring through some terrible, crunchy project that I can't see the end of and I feel like it's miserable and it's starting to feel like, work and I'm shackled to it, I drop that.
Yeah, that's great. The consumption of media while in the space, I find is tricky because oftentimes from my experience in my world, like you go on to maybe send a message or answer a message and then you just get like inundated with stuff. And it feels like I'm in a casino, honestly, when I'm just on those applications. So I love that you kind of have those boundaries and those ground rules and, like spending that consistent 60 minutes a day being an artist, given that you have such a busy life. I think that's incredible that you've kind of like carved that out for yourself. And I'm sure that over time, that's 60 minutes per day, that's 5 hours a week. If you're doing it like a Monday to Friday over time, like that's a lot of, intentionally dedicated time towards what you're doing. I think that's amazing. That has given me some ideas for myself as well.
Thank you. Yeah, it compounds. It adds up for sure. And there are a lot of really great artists who have made significant progress and made incredible work or an entire body of work over their lifetime in 1 hour a day. And when you try it on for size, it releases pressure and at the same time allows you to show up consistently and move forward. And there's a lot of magic in that.
That's awesome. One way that I kind of do similar is I've been experimenting with some like solitude, managed solitude, where it's like uninterrupted time in my day, whether that's like, it's usually in the form of walking with no phone and like no connection, like no one can reach me while I'm out walking. And that has been like such a powerful thing in my days to just give me that space to kind of like, okay, I'm not reachable. My mind cannot be torn into 40 different directions. It's just me. I'm moving my body. I'm breathing fresh air. I'm maybe talking to some birds.
Yes.
And just, embracing
as
the
one
outdoors. Yeah, as one does on a walk, talks to birds. I swear they talk back. They say hi and they can feel
awesome.
our energy. Yeah.
I just love that. So how does that feel now compared to how it felt the first time you did it? Because as I hear you talk about that, it sounds deeply refreshing to me. And then I think about the times when I'm truly away from my phone, like a quarter mile or a mile or two away from my phone. And there's some anxiety in that, which is sad 100%. To admit, but it's true. So what was that like when you first started trying the solitude practice?
It felt like it wasn't important. It felt like, I have things to do. I shouldn't be out going on a 25-minute walk first thing in the morning. I should be getting to my emails and getting to my desk and getting a good head start. If I'm up early, I should be getting a head start. But kind of like coming to how it feels now. Now it feels like a very necessary part of my day, and I'm almost like more productive and more effective in my work when I have that like peaceful morning space, because there's like a number of biological benefits to doing it as well, but also just like it's very pleasant, I will say. And I've gotten better at being away from my phone and not being with it. It's funny, I was walking and an older woman was running by. She's like, "Do you have the time?" I'm like, "I'm sorry, ma'am, I don't have my phone on me." I left the house without my phone. And she's just like, "This is young person without a phone on them. Like, what is wrong with you?" So.
I love it. I love it. That's great. Yeah. It's interesting when we put those constraints on ourselves, like you have this assumption, if I go on a walk and I, quote unquote, waste half an hour, then my email is going to go crazy and I'm going to be behind in the day. And then when you get to it, you're more productive. You said, you feel like you're more productive in your work. That's the same thing I've experienced with this hour a day, this creativity practice. I call it my golden hour because it's like this golden shining hour of my day.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like when I only have that amount of time to use, I'm so much more mindful and intentional about where I spend it. And I've gotten so much more. Sometimes I wonder what the heck I did with the, 18,000 hours a day before I had children and before I worked a full-time job. And, I'm like, what did I do with all that time? I get so much more done now that I have so much less time to do it. It's weird.
It is kind of weird how that seems to happen. I find as well, that when I have a constraint with time, I do get more done. If let's say I have to go leave the office to go do a shoot at 3 p.m., I'm going to go like all the way. I'm going to get as much done as possible because I know I'm leaving in, let's say, a couple hours. Whereas if I don't have anywhere to go, I'm just kind of like, take my time, like just work slowly.
Soft pedal it. Yeah.
Yeah. It's nice to have the constrained time, because then it effectively, your time becomes more valuable when there's less of it in a way. Or
that's it. You just said it. Your time becomes more valuable when there's less of it. That's beautiful. I think that's 100% true.
Yeah, it's similar to money. I have an economics background, so I understand that in like the inflation regard, like in the way if you print more money, money becomes less valuable. So just have all this time, then the time is technically less valuable.
That's great. That makes perfect sense. And I heard it from an economist, so now I can know that's a real thing, not just a hunch.
There you go. Here we are using an economics degree to make videos and
love it.
Connect with people on the internet. It's amazing. And just I want to just take a note. You're all the way in Albuquerque, New Mexico right now, which is really cool.
I am.
Really,
yeah,
really cool.
It's cool to be talking all the way across the continent, right? This is neat. Yeah, I'm from New Mexico. Lots of sunshine here today. Very warm. I don't know if it's warm and sunny today in Ottawa, but I'll try not to brag too much in case it's not.
I don't know Fahrenheit, but it's 13 Celsius. I don't know what that is in Fahrenheit.
It sounds really cold to me because I hear it in Fahrenheit, so I don't know. I'd have to go Google that, but I hope spring is on its way eventually for you.
Yes, I saw some trees budding today, so we have good signs. Lauren, great. I want to dive into kind of like a little bit about your origin story. How did you kind of like end up here? What are like the main chapters of your journey and your life?
When I was little, I always wanted to be an artist. I loved to draw and paint and make music and write stories, and so I kind of had this dream of being an artist. And the other thing that I always wanted to be was a mother and have a family and have a peaceful home and all the things that I was lucky enough to experience myself as a kid. And so as I grew up and chose what to study in school, I went with the art dream and I studied music. I studied music theory and composition. And then I was a professional musician for a couple years after college, which was amazing. And it was such an adventure. It was incredible. And it wasn't from a business perspective. I did not study business. I did not understand the market. I did not have the entrepreneurial mindset the first time around when I went to be, try to be professionally creative. And so my business kind of went belly up. And at some point I realized, wow, dream A, the way I'm doing it now with being an artist, is never going to pay for dream B, the family. Like there was this huge disconnect, this really depressing like chasm between the lifestyle I was having as an artist and what the stability and just financial security that I wanted to experience, and especially have, as we started thinking about bringing kids into the world and stuff, is like, wow, this artist lifestyle as I was experiencing it was just not going to pay the bills. And so at some point I took a hard left and decided, okay, you know what? I'm going to close the art dream down. I'm going to turn a new page and start a corporate career. Turned out to love my corporate career. I worked as a corporate strategist. I still do work as a corporate strategist. I love that world. I love that work. And I thought for about 7 years, like, okay, the art thing was a fun dream. And then I kind of grew up and got a big girl job. And so here I am as a strategist, and this is what I'm going to do now. I did build the security. I did build the stability and the peace. I have 2 beautiful children. I absolutely love our family life. But then after a few years, that first dream started coming back, and it hadn't really gone anywhere. It was still there in the background. I still wanted to create things. I still wanted to bring art into being that moved people, and I wanted to have impact with that. And so that began coming to terms with that and recognizing that I wasn't going to feel that there was always going to be this hollow spot until I kept making things. That sort of kicked off the next chapter of renegotiating, what does it mean to be an artist? What does it mean to provide? What does it mean to be a stable parent? Like all of these different roles in my life went through this redefinition process, because I thought, okay, there's got to be a way for this all to fit together in a way that feels fulfilling and true to me. And so it took a little while and took some experimentation to figure out how those priorities could all coexist. But eventually I did. And I feel like for me personally, I cracked the code on what in my life brings that balance and brings that fulfillment. So I started painting again, making music again, sharing my work online with people. It started resonating with people. I began to develop this circle of collectors and people who cared about what I was making, which was the best feeling on earth. And I was doing it in balance with my work as a strategist and my, 24-hour job as a mom. And, all these things that were important to me came into harmony with each other. And so that was just like awesome. And I felt like I had really struck a balance. And I started having other artists reach out to me and say, how's this working for you? Because there's a lot on your plate. There's a lot on my plate. I want to know what that framework is, how are you making all these hats work? And so I started working with other artists and started coaching them through the process of finding their own balance. And that brings us today. And I'm just deeply grateful to get to do all these things that matter to me.
That's amazing. And I want to dive more into your kind of work as a creative coach, but I think that's beautiful. It's, it sucks you were the starving artist, as the saying goes.
It comes from somewhere, it's like the stereotype exists for a reason. Yeah.
Were you playing live? Were you playing instruments live, or what kind of?
Yeah, I was. So I was a singer-songwriter, and I lived in London, England, and it was awesome, man. London was great. It was awesome. So I was freshly married. My husband and I lived in a flat with 5 people, and it was like it was great. It was so super fun. Great adventure.
All in the same flat, like 5 people.
It was,
flat?
Oh yeah.
Oh,
5
wow.
people. We did have 2 bathrooms if you count the little water closet at the bottom of the stairs, but it was great. It was an awesome experience. But what I found was I found myself in this loop of kind of unpaid gigs, like you'd go play in exchange for exposure. And then it's like, what does that mean? That's not really a tangible, like, how do I buy groceries with exposure? And being where I was in my career, I didn't really understand how to leverage that. I didn't have any idea how to create my own, like how to monetize those things. It was just so foreign to me because I'd been so focused on the art making and the skill building and like the skills as a musician and crafting this music that meant so much to me. And so I sort of went in with this big open heart, like I'm going to share this music that means the world to me. And it turns out the world didn't care much. And it makes sense now, but at the time it was a little bit crushing. And so it was about a year into this cycle of like, okay, this isn't really, I'm setting these goals. I keep being unable to reach them and I don't really know why. At that time, I would have loved a creativity coach myself. I could have probably benefited from someone parachuting in to help me. But anyway, it was an interesting adventure and I learned a ton.
It's I had a university prof who would always say this in a very difficult class. He always say struggling builds character. And I love that. And it stuck with me. And it seems like the struggles that you went through almost are the reason you're able to then, help other people. Because if you didn't feel it for yourself, it may not have been as easy to coach people through that.
I like to think so. Yeah. I like to think it was useful pain for sure.
Absolutely.
No, but it's true. And it's looking back now, I recognize where there were disconnects and where some of the patterns I'd gotten into with myself and how I was thinking about my work and how I was talking about my work and the way how I was sharing my work, all of these things. There were a lot of layers there where I wasn't really helping myself much, but I couldn't see it from inside the woods. Right.
Totally. Yeah. It's always, it's hard. You can't connect the dots in the future. It just doesn't work. That's a really nice story. Thank you for sharing that. I love diving into the origin story of guests on this show because it paints an interesting picture and you just like learn about these things and we can find like connection points. I was born in the UK, so I understand to a certain extent what life is like over there. I moved to Canada when I was 7, so not an adult.
Where in the UK were you born?
In London, in Hammersmith.
Oh, cool. Wow. I lived in Roehampton. So we went through Hammersmith all the time. Every time we went deeper into the city, we went through Hammersmith. That's great.
Were you there between 1996 and 2004 by any chance?
I was not. I wasn't there till 2012, 13, 14. Yeah.
I would have already been
so
here.
A little later.
That's all good.
Shucks.
I want to, Lauren, I'm curious about your kind of life as a creative coach. What does that look like? How do you learn how to coach people, or did you develop like a a program yourself, test it, implement it. How does that work? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
That's a great question. A lot of the things I help people with come from personal experience, come from me spending a decade trying to figure out how to make art fit with everything else. And also, 7 years of pretty good creative burnout and sort of the scraped knees from that and figuring out how to get through something like that to the other side. Combined with, though, in my work as a corporate strategist, I saw how I just got a totally different angle on how to approach the conversation of where do you want to go? Like, when you are in a corporate setting and you're setting goals and working to achieve them, there's like a totally different level of rigor and structure around that than I think artists ever really bring to the conversation with themselves about where they want to go. And so what I found is, as I was working in strategy and coaching people in a corporate setting, I started to learn some skills and frameworks that were helpful in a creative setting also. So then when I was working with artists and musicians and writers and sculptors, et cetera, about how to rebalance their creative lives, I started using a lot of these tools from corporate strategy to help bring, to just help lay a path a little bit and help provide a framework that made that process a little bit more clear and actionable for them.
I like that. So you just took the framework from the corporate world and applied it to creativity. So how does it work?
In some ways. Yeah, it's not a hand in a glove for sure, because corporate goal setting is like just such a different beast. Like just the entire vibe of being in a corporate office with a bunch of executives setting goals for a corporate, like that's just such a different thing than being in an artist world one-on-one, sort of in their deepest like pain points and what they feel like is getting in the way of their creativity. So it's a totally different animal. But the piece that is the same is the role of the coach to facilitate that and to help walk alongside someone through the transformation, and to know like, hey, I can hold the candle for you, and I can help ask the right questions, and I can help guide you through that process of finding clarity and then figuring out what to do with that clarity once you've got it. So that's, I just love that work. It's lights me up. It's my favorite thing I get to do.
I'm sure it is. I'm sure you get to see people in maybe a challenging time in their careers and their journeys, and, guiding them through and having them maybe rediscover themselves. I'm sure that is a very rewarding part of it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I meet most people on a bad day. People don't usually reach out to a coach when everything's going awesome. Usually there's something that feels like it's not working. And so it's really, really awesome to watch people go from blocked or afraid or, whatever it is that's going on for them, and watch them come out the other side of that stronger is tremendously rewarding.
I love that. And as the coach yourself, what are things that you do as a coach to kind of stay, I guess, centered in your life as a creative?
Wow, what a great question also. Thanks. Honestly, that golden hour piece is both a tactical, practical, like finding time in the day. There's also a context piece, a mindset piece for me. I'm very intentional about when I'm in that creative space, when I'm in that golden hour. I'm in my studio. There's certain music I'm playing. I've probably got a candle lit. I definitely have a cup of tea. Like there are certain cues that cue me like, okay, I am artist now. I'm now painting or I'm making music or whatever. And when I'm in a coaching space, it's usually not just a different time of day or a different setting. Like I work with most of my clients on Zoom because we're all across the country and world. So there are some cues to me that I can compartmentalize some of those things. And so the coaching brain and the artist brain sort of have their own little shoeboxes in my head. The thing that is challenging and that I've had to learn as a coach is to separate my experience as an artist from their experience as an artist, and not to project my own struggles or not to project my own story onto them. And that's where, as a coach, you learn to listen, to ask, to hold space and help guide without trying to tell or diagnose or prescribe anything too heavily, because I want to be very careful not to mix my own sort of art experience into what my client is actually facing in their world.
Yeah, that makes sense. And being that, so creativity, obviously it manifests, as we said, in many different ways. It's not necessarily just in playing an instrument or in drawing. I'm just curious, like, how does it work when people come and see you? Do you work with creatives across all mediums? So like people in digital, people in like physical realms, like stuff like that?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure. I actually myself have done some digital art. I love it. It's a really great medium to work in when you've got a baby strapped to your chest and a toddler running around your chair. Digital's great, not to have open cans of paint everywhere. Yeah. So there are a lot of different disciplines, a lot of different people I've worked with, and a lot of times the work we do is a couple layers deeper than whatever their actual creative expression is. So usually I'm looking at the internal experience that someone is having when they're in a creative space, whatever that may be. So they might be performing, they might be writing, they might be painting or drawing or illustrating, or I've worked with a jeweler before. Whatever that creative expression is, I find that it all has roots in what I like to call the person's relationship with their own creativity. And the way you're relating to your creativity can actually be understood and explored and shifted and intentionally built and rebuilt. And when I'm working with someone, we usually take it down to that basic level. You know, how are you showing up in your relationship with creativity? Are you treating it like a relationship that's important to you? What are you bringing into that relationship? What are you expecting to carry out of that relationship? And we start to get clear on how we can begin to use that type of a lens to shift what people are seeing in the results they're having. So if you're feeling blocked and unable to create work, then we're going to pull that thread all the way back down to some of the deeper levels of how you're engaging with yourself as an artist and how you're feeling when you have an idea or when you're working on an idea or when you're finishing a project or sharing a project. We go through all of those things to understand where that result is really coming from.
That sounds interesting. And like, would you work with, for example, like photographers and people in the video space and in that realm?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. The one group that I don't know if this applies to is, there are a lot of people who are creatives in the sense that they're creating prolifically, but they're creating, like, I'm thinking about graphic designers and sort of creative director, like that type of that level of creative, which I would love a chance to see if this framework applies there. I haven't tested that, so it'd be interesting to explore and see how that played out. But yeah, I've worked with digital artists, I've worked with video editors. I've not worked with any screenwriters. That's another group I haven't tested.
Interesting.
But it's interesting to see that this philosophy tends to apply across a bunch of different disciplines.
That's awesome. And for anyone listening and watching, Lauren's info will be down below. So if you're interested in exploring that, have a chat with Lauren, because Lauren you work with people from all over, as you said, right?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, thanks.
The reason I was asking about like the photography and videography is because traditionally I wasn't like a creative kid. You know, I wasn't artistic. I could barely draw anything that was, presentable by any standard measures. But then I found the realm of cameras, and because I was very passionate about technical things and working with my hands, I saw an opportunity to create things, but with my technical knowledge. So I was able to apply my knowledge or my curiosity towards technical stuff, and then create, I guess, quote unquote art, which was photos, and then it eventually became videos. But I always kind of grapple with that, feeling like an outsider, like feeling like I'm not creative.
Sure.
I'm just making videos here. And it's a big motivation behind starting this podcast called TheCreatives, because
it's awesome.
It's an exploration of it, and it's an exploration of it just as much as it is an exploration of the guests that join the show. It's an exploration of myself, and I find I'm learning a lot about myself through other people, and it's
that's wonderful.
It's an ongoing journey.
It is for all of us, Ramsey. No, it's interesting. I saw, the quotations you use. I make art, right? It was like this really tentative, like, I guess I'll call it art. Man, that's so common. It's so common. Even people who are practicing a really traditional art, like, painting or
Right.
something that's like, when you think of art, you think of a painting maybe. It's really hard to claim that title of artist for so many of us because we live in this really complicated time for art and artists, where we have this really complex system of values around what it means to be an artist and what it means to make art. And we've really complicated, I think we've overcomplicated the assessment of what it means to fill that role as an artist. In my mind, an artist is simply someone who makes meaning of the world around them and what they're experiencing inside themselves through a medium that involves creativity and imagination. And artistry is something that is deeply innate to all of us. And I don't think there needs to be any more permission slip that, you make art, you are an artist. Do you feel creative? Are you creating something that you feel is artful? It's art. I think that's beautiful. And people get confused because they think, okay, well, am I an artist or am I not? What they're really asking is, am I a professional artist or am I not? Do I want to be a professional artist or do I not? Which is a completely different question. But when it comes to the permission and the authority and the credibility to consider what you're creating to be art, I like to just empower people to redefine that a little bit and give themselves license to honor the fact that they're creating something that they want to have impact with and to bring some more beauty or meaning or whatever it may be into the world. So if I was gonna tell you to do one thing, it would be to just remove those quotation marks around the word art and just embrace, throw them out the window. Just embrace the fact that you're making something important and you're enjoying the process, and that's what it really comes down to.
I love that. I love that you said you're making meaning of your world through a medium, and that's absolutely amazing. But it's just, I do 100% agree, but it's like one of those things where it's like, it just can't be that simple, right? It's not that simple. It's got to be complicated. Everything's got to be complicated.
Yeah.
Not actually, but I feel that because of how complex our world is, and, we're surrounded by a lot of really, really, really incredible technology, which we will never understand. Most of us will never understand how to make it or how it works. So I find a lot of things in our life are very complex. I feel that almost spills over into other areas, the complexity, and we make things more complicated than they need to, and we feel like we must suffer in order to be worthy of the life that we want. And that's something I'm working on as well, to just kind of accept okay, it doesn't necessarily have to be ultra marathon level for it to be valuable to society and just worthwhile and worth putting effort and time into.
Absolutely. I've been really thinking lately about, what does it mean to be devoted to your work? What does it mean to be a devoted artist? And it's that same thing. It's how hard is it? A level of effort? Is it a level of commitment? Is it prioritizing it above other things? Is it what I'm willing to sacrifice? What makes me a devoted artist? And there's no agreement around that.
Right.
If you ask 100 people, you might get 100 different answers about where that bar is and what it takes to clear that bar and then substantiate yourself as a devoted artist or as a valid artist. That we don't have a common definition, and maybe that's okay. Maybe you just need your own definition and move forward with that.
Totally. Yeah, we're not. We are all much more alike than we are different, but we are also all individuals, and different things work for different people. Is what I'm learning. Yeah. And it's interesting you said devoted, because being devoted to something involves commitment, and I want to kind of talk to you about a topic that I've explored and that you mentioned you have explored, and it's about, why passion isn't enough for artists. And this kind of ties to a book I was reading where it challenges the whole passion hypothesis that if you follow your passion, you'll be happy. But it's unfortunately not true. So before I share kind of my exploration of that, I'm curious about your views on why passion is not enough for an artist.
Passion is a great igniter. It's not a great sustainer.
Okay.
Passion is a wonderful catalyst to get you to start a project or learn a skill or embark upon some, endeavor. But passion is also fickle, and it comes and goes, and it's like it ebbs and flows throughout the entire creative process, and it makes a really bad, you can't set your compass around passion, because passion is not going to be steady. And there are things in your creative path and practice that need to be steady. You need to be consistent. You need to be somewhat objective at certain points in the creative process, and passion can cloud that a little bit. And so, what I find is helpful to have in addition to passion is twofold. First, a clarity of purpose. Like passion is this kind of excitement and thrill and like, ooh, I feel passionate. A layer or two below that, there's purpose. It's like, why is this important to you? Why is this valuable to you? And once you have clarity around that, aligned action, like consistent, persistent action in the direction of that purpose, rain or shine, whether your passion showed up that day or not. When I see artists combine purpose and action, I think that's the 1-2 punch that it takes to take that passion that may have started them off and carry them all the way across the finish line. Because it doesn't have to be hard, and it doesn't have to be, a marathon, but it is a long, depending on what your goal is with your work, especially if you want to share it publicly, or if you want to recruit partners into that, like publishers or critics or galleries or whatever it may be, that runway is probably longer than you initially think when you set out. And so passion can't be the only thing fueling you on that long road.
Yeah, I love that. The runway's very much, much
always
longer than my impatient younger self has been learning slowly. I think that's a really important point that you've made about passion being the catalyst, and it's not sustainable to build your life on passion necessarily, and kind of rooting it in purpose and action is amazing. But I find what's difficult is like finding the purpose. Like what is the purpose? It's a question I ask myself often, and I have an idea of what I think my purpose is, and I can say it, I'm confident in saying like my purpose is to create experiences and opportunities and things that were never there before, and enable, even if it's either different physical reality changing or mental changing, like just enabling things that weren't there before. And I feel that's becoming more clear as like my purpose and what I want to do in this world. But it's still it's still questioned and challenged. I'm like, is it? Like, it is. Like, I know it's something I want to do, but is it the ultimate purpose? Like, so how?
Yeah, it's a hard question. When we start to turn purpose into like capital P purpose, it puts a lot of pressure on the answer.
Yeah.
And it's going to change. Like your purpose day to day or year to year is probably going to shift and evolve, and that's okay. I like to do a exercise I call the chain of 6 whys. Which is asking yourself, starting with a desire you have, like I want to host a podcast, right? Or I want to paint a new collection, whatever it is. And then asking yourself why 6 times. Like, why is that important to me? And then you answer. Okay, why is that important to me? And then you answer. Okay, why is that important to me? And you 6 times. Usually 5 or 6 times is enough to get you to where you're starting to answer on a deep core level. You're starting to get into like single word answers. Like, for me, some of my deepest drivers are connection and excellence. That's most of the things in my life. If I ask why 6 times, it comes down to either connection or excellence, because I deeply value those things.
Excellence for yourself? So, like you strive for excellence? Is that what you mean by that?
I strive for excellence. I appreciate excellence in others. I love to do something excellently. I love when I listen to a piece of music that someone has created. It's just exquisitely done. I just love that. For me, I just love that. And I respect the time and energy and attention and skill that it took to do that. And when I'm creating my work, I like to strive for that same level of excellence. Like, am I bringing my skills and talents fully to bear? Like, did I do the best I possibly could do with this piece?
Yeah.
And could I do better tomorrow or next week? Probably. But for today, was it excellent? I love that. That also comes from, at some point in life, I had to choose excellence over perfection. And perfection was a bad master. That was not a helpful value to arrange my creative life around. But excellence has been a healthy, that's good. That feels better to go for excellence. And so if you can get down to those single word drivers, you'll recognize it. When you hit on one of those, you go, okay, yeah, that I see a theme across different parts of my life. I see a theme in my work. Like, this is something important to me. It's a fun exercise. It's worth doing.
I'm going to try. It sounds uncomfortable. I'm going to be honest. But
all the good work is,
I think it's worthwhile. Because the first two answers are likely going to be like surface level, maybe slightly superficial responses. But then it's like, okay, why? Like, this is really uncomfortable. And I'm starting to learn that comfort and growth cannot coexist. So embracing that discomfort and like uncertainty has been a very big part of my journey as an entrepreneur and as a creative. I'm not going to throw quotation marks up because I am.
Good for you. Yes, sit on your hands if you have to. No quotes around that.
Sit on the
creative.
Hands.
Yes.
But
own it.
I really do admire that perspective of really digging deep and just saying like, why? Because I find sometimes in my life, because of how powerful media is, and I work in that industry, so I understand how compelling a beautifully crafted piece of media can be. Decisions that we make in our lives may not be our own decisions. It may be a decision that was planted in our mind as a result of very, very, very strategically executed media. And it's amazing. I think it's great if you can inspire someone to go buy a car, for example. But I think the 6 whys can shut down advertising agencies all over, because if you're really asking why do I want a $100,000 Mercedes-Benz? Like, if you really get down to it, you may not actually buy it. So I like that a lot.
It takes courage. It does take courage. Sometimes it will lead you to an answer that you didn't expect or that is inconvenient. And I think part of the power in that exercise is acknowledging that maybe there are moments in life where we might want to realign a little bit. Maybe maybe there are times where we are out of sync with our purpose or out of alignment with our purpose. And just because you aren't asking yourself that question doesn't mean you're not feeling that misalignment somewhere. And so, I don't recommend this exercise for people who aren't feeling some confusion or misalignment, because we can also get wrapped around the axle asking ourselves why all day and getting super stuck in our head and then never showing up and actually doing anything because we're so stuck in this existential loop around, why and purpose. But if you are feeling friction and you don't know where it's coming from, or there's a project that you just can't get into, or there's something you want to start and you're just not starting it, it can be one of many tools to help dig a little deeper.
I love that. And I want to just kind of circle back to the passion thing. So I'm currently reading So Good They Can't Ignore You by Cal Newport. I had mentioned it to you when
Tell me about that. I have not read it, and I've heard multiple people recommend it, so I would love to know your thoughts.
Because you're like hammer on the nail about the premise of the book. And essentially the author Cal, who also does tons of podcasts and is pretty there's a lot of content, and he has a lot of good perspectives. But essentially he challenges the passion hypothesis with the craftsman hypothesis, in that in order to create, a long-lasting career that you love, you must first be a craftsman in your work. And that involves building what he calls like career capital. And that is basically just showing up and putting in the hours and, approaching it in a way that a true performer would, regardless of what you do, and just kind of like building that passion. And so I think you may find a lot of interesting similarities to your mindset in that book. And that book has allowed me to help stop asking that question of like, is this what I'm passionate about? Like, do I want to do this? And rather focus that energy on just getting, so good they can't ignore you. And there's other layers to it. Yeah. I do recommend that anyone who struggles with that read that, and you as well, Lauren. I think you'd enjoy it.
I will. Yeah. It sounds like I need to meet Cal through his book. That's fantastic. Yeah, I love that philosophy, and I think it's critical. And I think it's easy to forget that when we're stuck in those internal debates and we're sort of going through that same loop and having that same like, do I want to do this? Do I not want to do this? We're not actually doing anything. We are neither doing the thing that we're debating nor freeing ourselves up to go do something else by deciding not to do it. And so it can be helpful to just sort of short circuit that by just taking an action, take a step, go sit down and do, just for today, go do it, see how it feels. And then if you want to do it again tomorrow, like go do it again tomorrow. And I like the idea of the craftsman, the steadfastness in that and the consistency in that. And I think it's those types of patterns that actually get us over the long term where we really want to go.
It's the 10,000 hours, if it's
10,000 hours, it's
not that you can't, but it's not a valid point to judge yourself on something if you haven't put in, I'd say at least 100 hours. If you've put in less than 100.
I mean, give yourself a chance.
Yeah, give yourself a chance. And that actually does remind me of a point I wanted to ask you of when you get into that 60-minute golden hour and you come from your busy life and now you're entering studio space or whatever that golden hour looks like exactly. How do you kind of transition from, fast-paced responsibilities to, okay, now I'm an artist? Like, is there like a warm up? Like, how does that look for you?
Oh, heck yeah. Otherwise it would not work. Yeah. I love to free write. I love to spend 5 or 10 minutes free writing. Basically, I think I first was introduced to this thought in the Artist's Way book by Julia Cameron. She recommends morning pages. I don't do morning pages in terms of like a free writing journaling practice first thing, but I do love to free write in at the very beginning of my creative time. And basically it's, I sit down with a notebook and I start writing whatever is on my mind and I just don't let the pen stop at all for, 5 minutes. I'll set a timer and go for 5 minutes. And even if I'm writing things like, I don't know what else to write next, I just feel really tired and my hand is cramping. Like that's what I'm writing because I need to get this really open channel from out of my brain so that I can clear the decks and get whatever mental clutter is there out before I start to get into a creative space. And some days it takes 3 to 5 minutes and I'm like, okay, I'm in the writing, I'm starting to recognize I'm feeling excited. Today I'm going to work on this painting. Here's what I'm going to do next. And great, I'm going to go do it. And I can sort of feel that threshold where I cross into creative space and I feel just ready to go. Mm-hmm. Other days it takes 10, 15 minutes. There have been days I've spent the entire golden hour free writing because that's what needed to happen. Mm-hmm. And there was stuff going on in my day. And that was the best use of my hour. Was to just sort through that junk and sort of externalize my thinking so that I could look back and just like process it a bit. But usually 5 or 10 minutes is enough. And yes, it cuts into my 60 minutes, but it's a valuable investment every single time.
I love that. I love that you have a name for it, free writing, because I set out to spend more effort on journaling over the last couple months, and I carry a notebook with me everywhere I go. I carry this lovely, made in America field notes book.
Look at that.
Everywhere I go. And I recently bought a pack of 6 of them, and I gave them all away to people that I'm close with because I'm like, here you go. Here's a notebook. Write stuff in it.
Do this.
And
that's awesome.
I wasn't telling them to free write because that definition wasn't I wasn't aware of that. But I basically would tell them, like, just write and don't judge yourself and just messy thoughts out of your brain. Yes. No one in the world's going to see it. And
exactly
the one of the best or one of the most, I guess, valuable things so far is being able to have that inventory of my thoughts and my feelings at a point in time. It helps me to kind of wrap my head around how I was feeling and maybe not just like get super spiraled and dwelling on some of the bad feelings or the negative feelings. So I'm going to experiment with the free writing thing.
That's
of just
powerful.
Like, go.
Yeah, no, that's the way to do it. Yeah. That's the way to do it. And it's when I first started a journal, I made the mistake of writing the journal as if it was going to be read, even by me in the future. And then I wasn't actually journaling. I was like concocting a life story and slowly writing a memoir in a notebook. And it was terrible and it felt awful. And no surprise, I didn't keep up with it. Free writing is totally different. It's like, the point is for it not to be read. I mean, it's not meant to be read. I've thrown away journals as soon as I've done with them, just so that, if I've reflected and gotten what I needed to get, like, it's done. It served its purpose. The purpose is in getting those thoughts out. And a free write is just a really, for me, it's a really comfortable structure to do that because it allows you to do something. It's more active than, like I've tried meditating at the beginning of a creative session, like on the pillow with the music. And for me, that doesn't clear my mind. It does in the moment when I'm meditating, when I focus on the breath and try to clear my mind. But the minute I'm off the meditation pillow, other than feeling a bit refreshed, a lot of the stuff that's happened in the day that I want to process through, I still haven't really processed through. And so a free write is a nice additional tool to be able to actively focus on processing certain thoughts or feelings.
Totally. And I think that's one of the biggest, I guess, limiting factors is the thought that someone might see it, or, you're kind of like, I don't want to write in this book because I don't want people to know. And it's like it's a fear that I would have. I try not to write in that regard. I do sometimes hope that in 70 years someone finds my notebook and reads it, because I like to just explore random thrift shops and stuff, and I have found old notebooks in those thrift shops, and really interesting stories can be read in those. And I do think about that.
That's cool.
And I'm like, I hope someone reads this in 70 years and is wondering what my slang and poor handwriting is saying. But maybe painting an
Would you rather
picture.
it be a stranger in a thrift shop, or like a descendant or a family member, some distant family member? Who would you want to be reading it?
Both. But what's really interesting is a descendant or family member, assuming the internet doesn't disappear, will be able to see
That's
me
true.
at like every stage of my life, or every year of my life for the last couple of years. I have like very few images of my parents in their 20s. And like I'm currently on a mission to get back to Lebanon, which is my home country, to just like uncover these mysteries that are my family that have just disappeared into thin air. And I'm like, like, when relatives pass away, I'm like, where are the photos? Like, I'm obviously mourning a loss, but I'm also like, I want the photos. I don't want anything except for photos and journals. And I just keep record, because they don't have the thing.
No, the genealogy is a lot hard. Those life stories. It's hard to know what's going on in one snapshot photo, even of, I mean, if you get the photo, that's great if you have the photo, but it only sheds light on that tiny slice of time. I received the like day planner of my great grandmother who lived on a farm in Wisconsin.
Wow.
And it was interesting to see, this was not a journal or anything she was like really capturing anything extra meaningful in. It was literally just her daily kind of agenda. And she would, at the end of the day, she would make notes on things that happened. And so she would note down like, oh, I won $50 at bingo. It was a great day. And then the next day it said, I found a snake under the porch. And it's funny, as I'm flipping through her diary, the number of times she was like, found another snake under the porch. I got this one. And then like, this snake got away. I know it's in the garden somewhere. And there must have been 17 references to snakes, which was really funny. I had no idea that my great-grandmother had this sort of ongoing battle with snakes on the farm. But it was interesting just to even see those tiny little kind of boring details of life. I loved seeing that 70 years later. It was kind of meaningful in a weird way.
I'm sure it is. It paints a picture and tells a story that you can, you could put the rest of it together with your imagination. But I think that's what's really beautiful. And I love speaking to family members and just like asking, like picking their brains for as long as they're willing to entertain my questions, because they hold the keys, right? They hold the keys to me. And I'm sure for you, did that help you understand yourself a little bit better by getting to know your great grandma?
It did. Yeah, it did. And even just to see her, this kind of the rhythms of her life, and the fact that she was, she would write in there that the plumber had to come fix something under the kitchen sink. And it was like, oh yeah, she was just a human, just humaning, tending for a house and raising some kids. Yeah. And it was really comforting to me, because so many things feel so different now. And it feels like the pre-internet age or whatever, it feels like that's such a distant time. And looking at her calendar and looking at how similar it looked, less snakes on mine, less bingo, less snakes, but there's still a lot of similarity there. And there was this sense of connection, like, okay, maybe things aren't all that different. Maybe the world's going to be okay, because we're all just kind of doing the same thing we've always done. It was nice.
I love that. I have a tendency to imagine the past in black and white and low resolution, but that's just because
me too.
The only videos I've seen is, old black and white film.
Grainy.
Which is, again, insane, because we're capturing our lives in high resolution digital, which if it doesn't go anywhere, I think that's crazy, because if I have grandchildren one day watching this episode, for example, they're going to be like, That's Grandpa Ramsey at 27 years old. That's what he looks like. And now he has no hair.
It's a mind bender. That's awesome. I know. It's so cool. It makes you wish you could go see your grandparents in high res, HD video, like on an interview.
Would you?
Talking about their thoughts.
Would you if you could?
Great. Oh, yeah.
That'd be crazy.
Absolutely, I would.
That'd be so...
But it would humanize them in a way. It would be like you would start to see them outside of just the role that you've always seen them in, or, that sort of narrow view you get of someone up in the family tree. You'd start to see all the 3D aspects of them. I think that'd be really neat.
I think that would be incredible. And maybe one day it'll be possible. If Elon Musk has anything to do with it, it might be possible. But for now, we can dream about it. Lauren, I want to talk to you about, is there any projects that you're proud of? Any kind of endeavors that you've done that you'd like to share?
Oh, yeah. Let's see. The project that feels the most meaningful to me is a collection of work that I painted on my second maternity leave. I wound up, that's when I sort of got back into painting and picked it up after a long time of being away from it. And I started capturing these little moments I was experiencing with my kids, and it's called my Tender Moments collection. It's a bunch of really, it sort of feels a little bit silly and whimsical and playful and light, but it's actually really imbued with some deep gratitude for me and just deep appreciation for sort of the early days of our family. And when I look back at that collection of work, there are about 50 pieces in the collection. And when I look back at them, I kind of remember each of the things I was experiencing in the moment when I painted that. And it'll remind me of the tiny little snuggles with my newborn, or those first steps, or the, sleepless nights, or whatever it was. That's probably my favorite collection, just for personal reasons, because it's so meaningful.
Have you shared that with the world? Is that something you've put out? Or
I have, yeah. That's actually one of the first things I started to share with people on Instagram, and I didn't expect much of a response from it because I was just sharing things I enjoyed making. And that's where I made some of my first art sales, was people reaching out and saying, oh my gosh, I love your piece. It reminds me of my family, reminds me of my baby. Can I get a print of this, or can I buy this from you? And that was so awesome to see the resonance and to see those things feel meaningful to others also. And so, yeah, you might have to scroll down a little bit on Instagram, but those are things I shared a couple of years back.
That's amazing. I love that, Lauren. And if there's a message you could impart to other creatives, other, women who may be in a similar position as you, their parents, but they have this burning desire inside of them to reignite that, is there any message you would want to leave to them?
Yeah, I would say there's no either or here. When you're thinking about yourself as an artist and how it fits in to all the other things that are important to you, there's no either or. It's a both and. You can be an artist and have a rewarding career that's different from your art. You can be an artist and a parent. You can be an artist and anything else you want to be. And if you can get clear on the way you're relating to your creativity and sort of the spirit you're bringing into it, and get that into a healthy place that's really aligned with your values and your purpose, then you can experience every little bit of fulfillment that you want to in your life as an artist. And so I would just encourage people to bring that ampersand, that glorious and energy into the way they're thinking about how art fits into their life.
I love that. Yes. Kill the oars. No more oars. You're doing both.
No more oars.
No more oars.
No more oars. And if somebody would like, if you're listening to this and you'd like to take a pulse on your creative well-being, I put together a quick 10-minute test you can take. I call it my spark or sputter test.
Cool.
And it's totally free. You don't even need an email to download it. You can find it at laurenspangler.com/spark. And it runs you through 10 quick questions to understand where you might be really strong in your balance around your creativity, or whether there are some places you might be able to make some changes to find more fulfillment. So, so that's one place people get plugged in. And if somebody takes that quiz, then I hope it helps.
I love that. And, thank you for putting that out in the world. at no cost. So I'm going to link, obviously, your website in the description. So on your website, I'll link your website, and I'll also link that test if anyone is interested in taking that test. Is it just 6 of the questions are why, and then it's like another 4?
It's just why. Yeah, 6 whys. And then after that, it's like, did you write that down somewhere important? Okay, now go do a free write. Now we're done. No. No, I should include the 6 whys somewhere in there. No, it's questions about sort of how you feel in your art practice and what comes up for you when you're making your work or sharing your work, and how all of that feels in relation to all the other parts of life. So, I hope it's a useful tool for somebody.
That's incredible. And are you actively taking on more clients to coach? Like if someone were to reach out and is interested in exploring?
I am.
Yeah, okay, great. That's
great.
Cool.
Absolutely. So, laurenspangler.com/connect. I actually would love to chat. I offer a free 15-minute call to just sort of connect and talk through what's going on in your world. No strings attached, no sales, no pressure, just talking. So, if anybody's interested, I always love meeting new people.
I love that. And if there's being that we talked about reading your grandma's diary, and in the chance that one day in 60 years you may watch this, is there a message you would leave to future Lauren?
Oh, I love this. This is like time capsule message.
Yeah,
I would just say, wow, to future Lauren, what a fantastic question. I would just want me to know I'm just doing my best, and I hope it turns out well. And if it does, I imagine myself having a lot to be grateful for, and I would like to remember how grateful I feel even now, before whatever else happens, that I'm just glad to be here. And I hope that I will be glad to be there someday, wherever that is.
I love that. And maybe fighting off snakes in the garden.
Maybe snakes. Yeah. Snakes on a farm in Wisconsin. That would be a plot twist for me. That would be a big...
That'd be very full circle moment. If you end up like, okay, I get it now. The snakes are here.
I get it now. Here I am. Oh, time for bingo. Yeah.
That's great. Well, Lauren, thank you so much for joining us all the way from Albuquerque on a 3-hour time difference. I appreciate your flexibility in coordinating this. I enjoyed this conversation a lot. I'm going to go ask myself why 6 times now, and just kind of dig deeper and, maybe practice more intentional free writing, and just, thank you for joining us and for your perspectives.
Thank you so much, Ramsey. This was a total blast. I really loved this conversation, and I hope it helps people. Thanks so much.
My pleasure. And thank you to the listeners and the viewers for watching, listening. The podcast is available on all major streaming platforms. It's available on YouTube in 4K. We post clips to Instagram. And if you enjoyed it and you have someone in your life that you would benefit from speaking about creativity to, talk to them about creativity, share the podcast with them, spark that conversation, and remember, ask yourself why 6 times, and just dig right in to what you're doing.
Do it.
I love it.
Do it.
But for now, thank you for watching, and we'll see you on another episode.